Okay, so hello everyone. We are continuing our design sessions. Now after New Year, it's January 3rd. You have Damjan, Alex, and me here. And in previous couple of sessions, we were, let's say, cruising along on the relatively abstract level of mapping various, CD pipelines and exploring the requirements, conditions, and so on. Now that the dust settled down a bit after those initial couple of sessions, we figured out that we want to do something more practical and start building some kind of proof of concept. And part of that is defining what MVP would look like for that proof of concept work. But we do want to start writing down some very concrete requirements, writing some code, and doing some design. So yeah, with that being said, let me share a whimsical board that we have been using. And yeah, get started. So in the spirit of proof of concept and MVP, what we really want to do is have a couple of, we want to have stages which can define dependencies on other stages and can pretty much run the CD, or let's say run the executions of those stages. So on the very high level, let me just add a couple of here. And essentially, if this is right now, let's call it stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. We do want to have those executing semaphore pipelines in the first stage. And if this is going to run a deployment process to some development environment initially, and then after that, this could, be deploying the same app to some staging environment, and once that is done, to some production environment. And in this minimalistic sense, we want to start defining how these can interact together and work together. And let me add something here. And I'm just going to write down a quick couple of things what we spoke about. So we want stage to be executing semaphore pipeline. Probably on any project. And we also want to be able to say that stage can define certain conditions under which it's going to start, meaning that the stage can subscribe to events that are happening in the different things that have been executed so far. So stage can subscribe to any set of events. Can run semaphore pipeline. And definitely stage as a status. Definitely running. I'm going to call it now green and red. And one other thing, and I'm going to stop at this level, that we want to seem super useful. The stage has a version. So what that would mean, that let's say in staging environment here, it could be green. And if someone would open this, CD workflow pipeline presentation, that someone could figure out which version it is. So what is deployed there? I can say maybe v1.2 of something. We also spoke that it can be potentially represented with some SHA, depending on application and so on. What the version actually is. So yeah. I don't want to go to too many details in this first pass, but in which area would you guys want to keep expanding here?
Well, we mentioned that proof of concept MVP. Maybe some natural progression is just to define goals on acceptance criteria on what it has to do, and then maybe a bit more detailed functionality breakdown for each component of this CD project type. So our MVP, we would use our deployment process for Toolbox as a use case for that. And the idea is to switch this to this CD type of project, right?
I'm unsure about that. I mean, we should definitely have like a couple of examples. Let's say 3 that we want to map with this, and then this POC version can execute. Not sure if Toolbox is maybe a little bit too complex and we could, do something simpler in the beginning. But if I would say what Alex, you said, and you can keep the notes definitely in parallel here.
Mm-hmm.
But if something is deployed to staging environment, certain version is deployed to staging environment and it's green, then I guess we want that to be possible to be deployed to production environment. And that would mean that in some queue for prod, we could have this v1.2, which is green in staging, and is entering this queue. We want to be able to subscribe to that event, that something is green here and which version is there. And I mean, this is, I guess, to some extent, a question for you. It seems now that some concept of manual approval here would be very useful for us to map maybe even the simplest process that we have in the company right now. That this can jump in this queue and we can approve it, and then it can flow into this and, become a reality also here by running this for pipeline. So in terms of, yeah, please go on.
Yeah, sure, but if we don't have to start with all of that, I would probably start with that first first bug that reacts to something outside happening. So things like GitHub commits or like new releases or stuff like that. Because it's hard to start without that. And then like all
Yeah,
this.
I on purpose went into this direction, which is more abstract, which worked for us in previous sessions, but you are probably right that at this point it becomes better if we are more practical and just react to something here. So if I understand correctly, you would maybe specify something very concrete, such as git tag maybe, and from that git tag the CD pipeline kicks off, right?
Yes, something like that.
So
And that would be like also the main difference, right? It wouldn't actually be like event based or like push events, but or webhooks. It would be on. Well, that's open to discussion, but yeah, whether we should pull those things or react on GitHub webhooks.
But yeah, but it's definitely on these. The relation is that once that happens, this starts.
Yes.
Okay. So stage can subscribe to us, okay, in the abstract terms, but what we want very practically is that can react to a new git tag on repo. Okay. If we are in that realm, beginning of the CD pipeline, do we want to into any more details around this, or this is enough at this stage?
Well, the main questions there are we only going to work with Git and start, or are we working with like GitHub? If you're working with GitHub Git version, or like any Git, and do we want to also try to support one other thing, like let's say S3 bucket or Docker image registry, something like that, just to like have that like
we should
modality from beginning.
We should try to base our proof of concept on the actual use case that we might have. That's my thought, because
yeah, I know Damjan is trying to have some sense what else would be supported in the future to be able to generalize at least a little bit, not to make it like too
narrow. Yeah.
But for this proof of concept thing, I would probably go with simplest possible, which would be just GitHub. But I don't think that we need necessarily to decide that. Maybe it could be one of the points where we will give some artistic freedom to Damjan for the next, and on the next session we can decide. After Damjan goes back to the drawing board and break some things down in purely on the implementation side. So only Git, only GitHub, or general Git, or one other source. Damjan, are you fine if we leave it at this?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Now let's say if we are working in that, very practical step-by-step approach. So we are, either polling or we have some listener or some repo. It arrives. This needs to start. It doesn't seem that there are like too many conditions for this to start. The tag arrived. Let's go. Right. There is, of course, if 3 tags arrive at in short space of time, we need to have a queue here. Which is connected to this stage. So all the stages can be running concurrently and independently. Is that Damjan thing that we should write down? What do you say? I guess.
Well, yeah, we can write it down, but it's kind of implied, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. In terms of there is a go, things are running. How about this mapping it to semaphore pipeline? We talked if it can be any project or a pipeline with this project or
That's mostly implementation concern. I would say it would be like
okay.
The fastest way would be to like start workflows and pipelines on existing projects.
That would actually be really nice and a feature on its own if you could have an overview where you are running pipelines on different projects, but you have them all in a single view.
So someone could abuse this product as a feature or just observing the statuses across pipelines. Just saying.
Yes.
As a dashboard. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe
that's the most practical thing here, because based on what different teams on our side could easily do is definitely okay. Let me just represent the things that we are doing already here. So let's connect those two.
If you just circle back for a second to this like execution about running in parallel, so like stage 2 and stage 3 can run in parallel, that's obvious. But do we want to have like inside individual stage things running in parallel? Would that ever be like let's say it's like
sooner or later someone will come with a crazy idea that they want to run things in parallel, but that would be, I think, someone will be modeling some different process which is not CD. Because the nature, if it's like any environment, you don't want to be deploying two things at the same time.
Yeah, it depends, right? Like you could have like, let's say, a cluster where you deploy various things that are like not connected, but you like represent it with like you have an environment which is represented with one box, right?
I mean, we have seen everything, so I can easily manage that at some point, sooner or later, someone would come and say, hey, whatever comes into the queue, I want it to start running regardless of what else is already running there, potentially. Again, I don't have a very logical explanation, but having a mode on queue, I mean, cancellation is very likely, let's say. If something comes in, I might want to skip deploying previous versions. We have seen that with quite a few customers modeling their deployment process. So if this particular moment is very late, and I have V11, V12, V13, all the queuing ones, I want to remove them from the queue, and I just want to, or maybe not remove, but set to give them some status, and actually run only the newest one.
The thing with those is like we have a bunch of those features already on like our pipelines level.
Yeah.
But like if this is encapsulating something else that is not a Sanfor pipeline, then like we would have to re-implement that here as well. Otherwise, you could just go to like your pipeline YAML and say like auto cancellation.
Yeah. Well, that's something we don't need to decide now, but yeah, it is in that category of probably the most that we can say at this point in time. Now the queue can behave is the simplest possible queue. First in, first out. But in future, we can foresee that people might want to implement various things on the queue. I mean, we do want to have that, pause on the queue, which is maybe more of like cordon on the stage. I come here and I, click some pause button, and nothing new will be entering. Do we want to be specifying those things now?
I don't think that that's for the MVP or like for the first.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
There is like maybe if you're talking about these queues, there is a version where like there are versions are coming, but like different kinds of versions, like right. So let's say this is there are two kinds of things that can be deployed to staging. And
for example,
okay, let's say we have two different services completely. So Sanfor 2 and Sanfor Classic, let's say, and both are deployed in same staging environment, right?
yeah, but then those would be different stages, I think.
Yeah. So the main question was here is like, is this like stage always mapping to one thing that can go in, or is it like there are like two different things that can go in? And if then there are like two different things that are individually versioned, then we have like not a simple queue, but we have a matrix of like.
I think it would be very hard for people to reason about that when they're looking at what's happening. But I might be wrong.
Okay. Let me illustrate an example. So let's say we are packaging documentation and new version of the service, like on two previous separate stages, and then the next stage. So there is stage 1 that prepares docs, stage 2 that prepares service, app that they are running in parallel, and then there is third stage that starts basically publishing those two together whenever there is new one of each of those. And then like
I think you want to have those separate. I mean, I don't know.
Because on like one of those drawings initially we did draw something like that. And then I guess it can be reasoned.
I mean, just to say, what I'm thinking about is if stage maps to Sanfor pipeline.
Excuse me, I just have I think someone ringing doorbell. I have to check. Back in a second.
I mean, Alex here. I mean, theoretically, anything is possible because Stanford pipeline can be of any complexity. You can execute number of things in parallel, number of blocks in parallel.
Yeah.
With number of parameters. So could you be deploying documentation to S3 and the application to a server and to
There's one thing so I'm clear. Pipeline or workflow?
pipeline?
So just a single pipeline.
Yeah, I think that at least in this stage, we definitely want to map stage to only a single pipeline.
Okay.
I mean, if you map it to workflow, then there you can have various, promotions and various other things happening or not happening, and then how are you going to map that back to this? Because workflow doesn't have a status; it's a set of statuses of different pipelines.
Yeah, makes sense.
But even within the single pipeline, you could have 3 blocks running in parallel. Let's say.
Yeah, absolutely. And you
can
have
do
logic that skips some of them based on certain conditions or runs others. So
Damjan, just a quick recap on this on this stage. So to give an example, you could be running maybe potentially some Terraform apply within the single Stanford pipeline. You could Terraform apply something. You can potentially run database migrations. You can deploy the app, and in parallel or before and after or whenever, you can also deploy the documentation. So yes, theoretically, a one stage can do many things. No problem around it. You can do it in one or more blocks, and that pipeline can be parameterized definitely by a number of parameters. A link to where the documentation maybe lives, where this image lives, where that image lives, and so on and so on. So, but I cannot map it back to your original questions. Can multiple things happen in a stage? Definitely.
Yeah, maybe I think I have a more clear image now what I wanted to ask. Maybe if you can draw just 3 boxes on the side somewhere, it would be easier to like. So 2 in parallel and then the third one in front of them.
Like this?
Yeah, on the neck.
The other way around.
Other way around, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so the main thing was with this queue. So let's say there is dot.
I understand. Yeah, so app A, app B, and then
Yeah, and as when new versions arrive, how is the queue looking for that?
and you have in this stage you have a queue, right?
Yes.
And what can land in the queue can be.
So this essentially like this thing would be triggered whenever there is a new version of either app A or app B, and it would reuse the previous, like the other one. So
It's good that we are specifying this. Maybe the only decision that we will come up with this point is not to solve it, but this is the case, right?
Yes. So let's say in Q we have A 2 and B 5 6, right? And then so that would be like the first, like the one item that is in the queue.
It's one item, or those are 2 items? I mean, they
think,
cannot.
yeah. That's where I was like questioning earlier, but I think it's actually like one item, not like two separate items, because like in this case, like this next stage would be triggered like whenever new version of either of those two appears, and that it creates like a execution of stage 3 that has like the new version of app A and the last available version of app B. And then the next one would, again, once app B arrives, it just creates the next thing in the queue with different versions of these two, right?
Yeah.
But so yeah, if you could just in one say app 1 v22 and app B v55.
You mean in the queue?
Yeah, so essentially like
or in this stage? So you're asking how is this stage represented? What's the status of this stage, right?
No, I'm talking about these items in the queue. So item in the queue is not like the version of app A or app B. It's both. So because each execution will take two available versions of app A and app B at that point. And so whenever new thing happens, like we have again two new versions.
Maybe we can start from here. So what is representing the status or a version of this?
Yeah.
Before we resolve it, well, it's app A and app B. Both of them will have some version of some statuses.
Yeah, so 2.1, let's say there, and 5.5 or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, and
then let's say the first, if you go in queue up there, so one of, like, let's say number 1 has app A 2.2, but app B is 5.5. So app A was like first.
I don't know if I'm thinking in terms of the events that are coming in. I mean, what will land in is that
first, chronologically, right?
Yeah, but the point is that one of the things is going to land in. But if this function, this pipeline takes two parameters, then you are going to have to pass two in, as you said. And what would you if this is okay? Let's say the top of the queue is being executed first. So what we are going to pass to the pipeline, I don't know where to write, but it would be run, and it will be for app A, it will be 2.2, and they will pass the app B as existing, right?
Yeah, latest or something.
Latest, which would in practice mean 5.5.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so maybe the detail then here would be, okay, when are we taking the latest, whether when the thing appears in the queue or when it starts executing and so on. But yeah, we don't have to go into so much details right now, but yeah.
But there is that component of handling versions. And this seems to be stamping in that area.
Yeah, I think we covered this sufficiently enough. We can go back to other topics.
I think we may have 5 more minutes left. So what are the key things that we need to add to this list? that might be missing to make sure we have a clear mini scope. The stages between themselves. So stage 3 can be triggered based on the output of stage 2, right?
Yeah.
And are we doing that in the first version? Or
Yeah, that's my question. I think that
I mean, things that we have spoke about previously, but are maybe not written down here, that we want to be able define stages completely independently. Through API.
yeah, we haven't mentioned UI or API or anything for this, but yeah.
So that like bits that we can mention here. There is, let's say, a CD pipeline that is encompassing all of this, and which lives in a project, let's say. And then if you want to come in, you can create a new stage, and you are, let's say, have CRUD operations on that stage, completely independently from any other stage within this same pipeline. And then you can, and that stage can subscribe to that's maybe one of the main things that we haven't talked in detail, are those events that are being emitted. So
yeah,
let's say this is something in the realm of stupid simple. There is a new git tag, great. Enters the queue, starts executing here. We call a certain Stanford pipeline. We probably, Damjan, want to be able to pass parameter to that pipeline, which might be this 1.2.
Yes. We want to be able to pass parameters to pipeline, and we also want to have like parameters on the stage level. So like this one stage has this set of parameters, and then so like static ones, let's say, or secrets.
Okay, but that is really opening.
Yeah, can of worms.
Yeah, but let's say we pass that one to this pipeline. This pipeline runs. It's very simple. Does a deployment somewhere by moving a binary on that to that server, rebooting the server. Then this stage, then the pipeline finishes. After, let's say, 5 minutes, this becomes green for that parameter 1.2. We'll see version parameter. And then I guess this thing want to emit certain event that it's done with 1.2 and it's green here. And then this guy can subscribe to this one somehow.
that's in scope for POC, right?
I think so. Because
Yeah, I
once we
think
have
it's
that, then we can chain many things and do many things. Right now, we can only connect these two. But
perfect.
this is so the stage can react, can execute this status, but yeah, maybe add it separately for now. Stage can emit
And subscribe to it.
subscribe is done here. Stage
Oh,
emits events.
Okay, now it's clear. I thought that item number 2 is any set of events within that integration, like Git or whatever. But okay, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Perfect.
Well, we're out of time, so that kind of concludes it and wraps it up. But
And in POC, this is purely API based.
absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
The cheapest possible thing which is spinning. But I think it's a great start, but we have to continue. Yeah, Damjan can potentially start writing down all of the open questions.
Yep,
that we
I will
have.
do that for the next one.
Yeah, and then next one we start with Damjan's questions plus what we have here right now. Okay, sounds great. See you in the next one. Bye.
Bye-bye.